If you're unable to move with fluidity in your environment, then you're absolutely not going to be trusted as a leader, both for your family and for your workspace. This is important. You're not going to be able to find that sweet spot of being a trusted leader because of the fact that you are going to you're probably not going to thrive in chaos. And I say probably, but I mean, you just absolutely aren't going to thrive in chaos. All right, everyone. Welcome back to the Art of Masculinity. I am taking on a lot of leadership questions these days. And obviously that's happening because I'm focusing a little bit more into leadership, leaning into that with my own business ventures, but also in the sense of trying to help build high quality leaders. Right now and today, I think we see a very, very large suffering of good high quality leadership. Majority of it is due to the fact that people just don't emphasize actual training. The other portion of that is that the training that is provided is very classroom centric. It's not super applicable, and most is based around like some form of personality test, which I don't necessarily agree with. It's not applicable in real time for leadership, and also it can pigeonhole people because let's face it, we all have the ability to change, especially when we willfully want to, or we see things that we want to implement into our own personalities and traits and behaviors that'll force us really to have some provocation for change, which then throws something like a personality test off. So I don't necessarily agree with those. Plus the fact that not one leadership style is one that governs every situation. It just doesn't. And the more that you put yourself in leadership positions, the more you're going to realize that one form of leadership will not suffice to effectively engage team members and provoke progress through all the team members and create solid team cohesion. You've got to have a toolbox of leadership skill sets, and that takes a lot of training. It takes a lot of training. It takes a lot of constantly flexing that muscle, and it takes a lot of bringing that tool into your life, or those tools into your life, in different capacities and experimenting with them. Because one of the first things we have to understand, and I'm going to go into these a little bit, but I'm writing a new leadership book and these are going to be highlighted extensively. But the 5 pillars really of effective leadership, the first thing we have to understand is that first principle of leadership underlying everything. You guys have heard me talk about this before, is the decision-making ability. Now, why is decision-making part of this fundamental core foundation for leadership? Is because regardless of what anybody tells you and regardless of what you believe, leaders inherently, I'm going to say this again, inherently have one singular job, and that is to make decisions. Now, don't get me wrong. There are forms of leadership that include collaborative decision making. But at the end of the day, the leader is required to say that that group's proposal or that group's idea is going to be the way that they're going to move forward. At the end of the day, they are the gatekeeper. If you're tracking with this, you're going to understand that it doesn't matter how you boil this down, every leadership modality, decision making is an inherent trait of a high quality leader. You have to be able to say yes or no, or let's go back to the drawing board, or hey, let's get more collaboration in this because I don't think that this has been ironed out completely. And I think potentially if we make this decision, we could be missing something, right? Like there's so many different ways to carve that pumpkin that you have to be able to understand the sole purpose of a leader is to make that decision regardless of which way you're carving it. So there's no it's the single most important thing that, in my opinion, a leader needs to be able to do. And if you are looking at achieving this high effective leadership style, you're going to have to be comfortable with that. And this is partly why I don't agree with anybody that refers to themselves as a servant leader. If you've listened to me for a while, you know that I've gone over it. I've talked about it, but I don't believe in a servant leader. We just don't have those on this planet today, for the most part, because the fact that inherently a servant leader is devoid of any external motivation, which means you have to disregard the company, you have to disregard the company's mission, the goals, your own personal goals, your own ambitions. You have to disregard all of that and say that the people that are part of your team, everything they feel, do, think, see, say always comes first. Nobody, and I mean nobody I have ever come across on this planet personally has ever been somebody devoid of all of those things. So servant leadership does not encompass what most people think it does. If you go by the book definition, right? This is not me saying this is Johnny's opinion. This is the book definition. So stop talking about servant leadership, please. Now you may have there's other leadership styles that I'm going to dive into in my book that I'm going to talk about that kind of probably more closely align with someone who really believes that they're a servant leader, quote unquote. Putting my fingers up here. There's another terminology for this that I think is probably far closer. It doesn't mean that these people aren't good-hearted and they do put other people pretty high up. It's just they're not devoid of their own ambitions, and they're not devoid of the company's ambitions or the company's goals or profits or anything like that. Because if they were, they wouldn't have a job, right? Like at the end of the day, that's quote unquote servant leader absolutely wouldn't have a job if all of a sudden the company was constantly failing, but they're just looking out for the people. It just doesn't make sense. They don't really go hand in hand. So anyways, that's my soapbox for the servant leadership, but that's not where we're at today. We're at the 5 pillars of effective leadership. And that first pillar of effective leadership is decision-making, which is why the servant leadership box of how it's defined is not really a leadership position, because it doesn't inherently have, if you're doing it by the definition, it doesn't hold the decision-making process that a leader is required to have for being a highly effective leader, and an inherent responsibility of leadership. Essentially that is devoid of an inherent responsibility, and therefore kind of takes it out of a leadership role in general. So the next pillar, so pillar 1, decision making. Pillar 2 is adaptability. If you do not have adaptability in your repertoire, go get it, because a leader that is fixed on one path, that is fixated on one approach, and only fixated on their experiences in life, on how they've seen things done, is not going to be a highly effective leader. You are going to be pigeonholed, and you're not going to be able to traverse the complex situations that are inevitably going to come up on this planet, and in your job and in your life. Like, you are going to get things you've never seen or heard of before, and you've got to be able to critically think, assess, and then decide on an action or an approach moving forward. And those that are not adaptable are not able to do that, because of the fact that they are unfamiliar with those potentially situations, and won't have a reference point, and then will not be able to think outside of the box to come up with a solution. So being adaptable is incredibly important. If you're unable to move with fluidity in your environment, then you're absolutely not going to be trusted as a leader, both for your family and for your workspace. This is important. You're not going to be able to find that sweet spot of being a trusted leader, because of the fact that you are going to you're probably not going to thrive in chaos. And I say probably, but I mean, you just absolutely aren't going to thrive in chaos. Those leaders who are adaptable thrive in chaos. And that means that if they can thrive in chaos, they can thrive in relaxed, kind of peaceful times. But it's the chaos that separates a highly effective leader from a non-effective leader, or an ineffective leader, or a weak leader. That chaos is inevitably going to happen. You are not going to be able to cut off chaos. It is just one of the components that we deal with in this world, because it's unpredictable. And so if you are truly trying to achieve that highly effective leader, you're going to have to be able to be adaptable. You're going to have to be seen as somebody who can kind of manipulate themselves and become a chameleon to the environment, to then ensure that they always have a solution, or at least some direction. Doesn't mean that it's going to be right. So don't get me wrong there. Like, being a highly effective leader does not mean you will always be right. Actually, it's going to mean that you're going to be wrong, and you're going to have to take ownership of those decisions when you are wrong. but it's going to make you a leader who makes decisions. And those leaders are trusted. Those leaders provide safety. People feel as though when those leaders are there, they're able to at least have comfort in the chaos because they know that that leader is going to envelop the decision making process and give them the boundaries and allow them to operate. And then also that leader is going to take responsibility if it doesn't succeed, right? When people feel safe in that under that leadership, it's because that person, that leader, specific leader, is adaptable. So adaptability is a big one for these 5 pillars as well. They're all big, guys, but that's a huge one for me because when I was in special operations, if I was not adaptable, or even when I was doing protection, if I wasn't adaptable, we were going to fail, absolutely fail. If I just froze and I wasn't adaptable, we would not have finished a mission. We would not have succeeded in anything that we did that I was part of the leadership element. And it wouldn't have reflected trust in me, and my guys wouldn't have wanted to follow me anymore, right? You'd have a lot of dissension, you'd have a lot of arguments, and you'd have a lot of internal turmoil. So the adaptability point is absolutely key. The third pillar is communication. So communication is it's one of the things that sets us apart as human beings from the animal kingdom. Now, yes, the animal kingdom can communicate, but we can communicate in very complex ways. And communication is also part of our social connection, which is another advantage that humans have over a lot of the animal kingdom. We have that component of social connection. Well, communication not only allows you to connect and understand your team members and also show empathy, which that needs to happen. People want to feel seen, heard, and felt, right? Those are the 3 components. And if you can only do that through communication. So effective communication is part of the thing that needs to be included in this leadership. Also, with communication, you have to be succinct and you've got to be clear. If you are unable to communicate clearly to your team, you are going to cause mass confusion and you are going to become part of the chaos, which is absolutely one of the most fatal flaws a leader can make is become part of the chaos. You are a grounding force for your team. If you are part of the chaos, you have become an ineffective and weak leader. 100%. No other way to look at it. You are not part of the chaos. You are the solution to the chaos. You are the one that sees the bigger picture and gets through the chaos. Even if the decision is wrong, you still push to get through the chaos, right? So that communication skill is absolute key to being that kind of effective leader. Now, whether you're in a work environment or in a relationship, if you are not using that communication, if you're not working on that communication, if you are not working on your own emotional intelligence and being able to convey your position or understand others, then you are not actually being a highly effective leader. And you are missing one of the 5 pillars of this foundational leadership, core leadership understanding to any of the models that you are going to encounter, right? Leadership models are all based on these principles as I've synthesized them. These 5 pillars are what stand up every single model. And it's just part of being a highly effective leader. Now, the 4th pillar is going to be integrity. Now, why integrity? Because as a leader, you are only as good as the respect that you earn from your team. What does that mean? You need to be willing to step into the trenches. You've heard me talk about this, but also you've heard the fact that integrity is everything. Your word becomes everything. Your actions become everything. When your team looks at you as somebody who is willing to not only go to bat for them, but also be in the trenches with them, them and you understand the actual work that's being done and you're willing to do the things you're asking them to do, you immediately earn a high level of respect, right? Like that is absolutely part of your job as a leader. And you have to earn that respect every day. And you can only earn that respect every day if you have a high level of integrity. So you need to be actually putting forward strong efforts to build integrity in the workplace and in your relationships. I've seen so many men struggle in relationships because of their lack of integrity. With that lack of integrity, they have not been able to hold that trust that their partner desires so much from them, and then they're distrustful of them, and then that deteriorates the relationship. If you guys have heard me talk about relationships, women, and we've all heard this, but women are crockpots, right? They need this emotional and energetic connection to really start to steamroll the attraction to want to have intimacy. Well, part of what's going to turn a girl off is when she can't trust her guy, right? And so if you are a guy that is not built upon integrity as a leader, then you are not going to build that trust. You're going to build distrust and then a fractured relationship. So integrity is the fourth pillar of this. And the fifth pillar, I've already mentioned it, but it's ownership. You have to be willing to own, because you have to own your decisions as a leader, because we said one of the things a leader always has to make is decisions. Ownership goes hand in hand with decision making, because you have nowhere else to pass that responsibility off to, for good or for worse. You have nowhere else to pass it off. If you start blaming a team member, then your higher ups or your managers or whoever's above you, your owners, are going to look at you as like this sniveling victim. They don't care about being a victim. They want solutions, and they look to you to get those solutions. Now, whether or not the solutions are achieved is based upon the performance, but the leader needs to take ownership, because you're put in a position as a leader to be the one chest that everybody gets to go and poke for whatever responsibilities fall under your purview, under your team's purview, and that is part of your role. They want one chest to poke when there's a problem, and they want one hand to high five when there's accolades that need to be given, right? You are also in charge of giving those accolades down to the team and trickling that to the right people. But the people above you want one person. They don't want to look around for everybody else, because they don't know everybody else. They have the one face and the one person. If you make it that easy on them, you will be a high quality leader. But you got to have ownership in your life. You've got to have ownership not only in your workspace, but also in your personal life, and especially with your loved ones, because the fact that it will get them to trust you more, especially when you open up and you're vulnerable about your failures and your mistakes, but also your triumphs and your wins, right? If you open up and accept those and you own those, then you're going to be a highly effective leader. So the 5 principles you guys need to remember, the 5 pillars that you need to remember, are decision making, adaptability, communication, integrity, and ownership. All right. I hope you guys took some notes. If not, re-listen to this podcast episode. Make sure you write these down and try to focus on these every single day. If you're truly desiring to be a highly effective leader, a high quality leader, focus on these 5 pillars. How are you embodying those 5 pillars? And how are you holding yourself accountable to those 5 pillars every single day, and start to flex that muscle? Okay, the more you flex it, the easier it is to step into all 5 pillars and to make that the true foundation of whatever leadership model you want to embody. All right, guys, I hope you enjoyed this episode. And as always, it does a huge favor for us when you guys go to Apple iTunes and give us 5 stars, or Spotify, rate us with the high rating on Spotify. I don't think it's stars. I don't know. Maybe it is stars. I can't even remember. But make sure you guys head over. Let everybody know what you like about the show, so you can help guys really look at the show and have them hopefully see something that can improve their lives and tune in. So again, guys, if we can help one guy improve his life, we've done our job every single day. And that is what we're here to do. So make sure you guys head over to Apple, iTunes, Spotify, wherever you listen, subscribe, like, share, Give us a review, 5-star review, and continue to push out the Art of Masculinity, because we are on a mission to really empower and promote men into the next wave of the masculine that's going to be out in this world, that's shaping the future, right? And that's our goal. So hope you guys enjoyed the episode. And as always, the world deserves a better caliber of man, and it's our responsibility to give it to him, our obligation to give it to him.